frightening is that to all of us? So, welcome again. It is story time today, and our focus is looking at the goddess Durga. And the reason is that right now on the Hindu calendar, we are into Navratri, which is the 9 nights of the goddesses. And this is a 9-day event that just precedes Dashera, which is the burning of the 10-headed, I don't know what to call, demon, devil, whatever, which represents as the vices. So this is the really symbolically looking at the end of the night of humanity. And so what we thought we'd do with our story time, and in keeping with the theme of Navratri, the goddess who really gives birth to all the other ones, Durga, is read the story. And we're going to do the condensed children's version, given the time we have. There is a version that goes on and on and on, as these epics tend to, but we'll do the short version. And then we'll look at the significance of it. How is this relevant to my life? But before all of that, I know you're very excited. Before all of that, we're going to start with the reflection. So seated comfortably, and if you want to do this with eyes open in a natural way, you're welcome to try that. And taking a moment to relax the body while still keeping it engaged. So really the feeling that I'm seated in a very royal way, as if I'm meeting a very important person, which I am. And that person would be the self. I'm going to go inwards, step away from all the usual worldly thoughts and concerns, and those very ordinary ways, very common ways I tend to look at myself, which is around roles and relationships and responsibilities, and quite frankly, even just in a physical way. These are very common ways of looking at the self, and they actually can pull me away from the true value and greatness of the self. And they begin to engage and entangle me in external validation. So I'm going to turn inwards, step away from all of these conventional forms of self-identity, and come into a very quiet space inside, the very center of my inner world, which is simple, as calm as the eye of a storm, and very light. I don't take a lot of baggage with me into my inner world. And this is where I can actually hear the self, feel the presence and true nature of the self. I imagine a tiny star in the center of a universe. That's the feeling of the self in the center of my inner world. I am a tiny spark of magic and wonder that we call life. I'm a living being, not a thing. And that makes me a little different from those stars in the physical sky. I am a spark of light energy, life. But as living, I radiate qualities not just light, but qualities. And the deepest, most essential quality I have is peace. I am a star of peace, a soul, and I am the hero in my own story. What is the objective of this story? What is heroic about the self? That is what spirituality invites me to discover. My true self and the real sense of my own story. Om Shanti. So to get a sense of our own story through time, many, many souls have written epics, Om Shanti, epics and myths that I think are trying, whether it's an allegory or a metaphor, trying to capture the story of every soul. So it's a couple of things these myths and epics do. They invite us to look a little deeper at ourselves rather than just the surface of day-to-day life. But they also remind us how similar we are under the skin. These are shared stories that we all seem to respond to. So, again, inspired by Navratri, the story of Durga. Are you ready? It's exciting. All right. I'm sorry. This is the condensed version. But let's see how we go. I liked the long version. I was almost late. I got so engaged in it. I almost forgot what time it was. But here we go. So this is the story of Durga, who is the slayer, the one who is able to defeat Mahishasura. And Asura is a name for the god. So Asura is one who is in opposition to God, basically think they're greater than God. So Mahishasura. So you'll find out who that is. Although you won't in this story, so I almost feel like we have to read a piece of this story so you can really get the sense of Mahishasura, and then we'll skip back to the shorter version. So, the story of Mahishasura starts with his father, Ramba. Not to be confused with Rambo, Ramba. Ramba was an Asura. Again, tends to oppose, a non-believer, if you will, opposes the gods. So Ramba was an Asura who performed severe penance. Once he realized, I really need to get on the good side of the gods or I could be in trouble. So he performed severe penance to make the gods happy. Lord Agni, the Lord of the fire, was pleased with the penance and appeared before him. Open your eyes, son of Dahanu. Ramba opened his eyes and bowed to Agni. Agni smiled and asked him, I am pleased with your penance. So what do you wish? This is always a dangerous question. When gods ask, what do you want? This is a very dangerous question. So this is the first thing we should pay attention to. Be careful what you ask for. Ramba said, I wish for a son, my lord, who cannot be killed by any man or god or animal. Now, it seems that a god is going to get himself into trouble if he creates a being who can't control. But anyways, that's my own opinion. But he has given his promise that he will fulfill his wish. So Lord Agni said, so be it. However, If your son himself prays to Lord Brahma for the boon, he would become even more powerful. I don't know how much more powerful you can get, but he would become even more powerful. Ramba nodded his head as Lord Agni disappeared. Ramba, the king of demons, then fell in love with Mahishi, a water buffalo. And the water buffalo was Princess Shyamala, who was actually cursed to be a buffalo. Their son's name was Mahishasura. As Mahisha's mother was a buffalo, he was able to change into a human and a buffalo form and could even assume the form of other animals. However, Mahishasura's parents died soon after he was born. So Mahishasura was brought up by Ramba's relatives. No man or God can defeat you, Mahisha. You are meant to be a great king, they would tell him. And Mahisha soon believed all of this and thought that he was invincible. When he had grown up, he went to his uncle, the ones raising him. Uncle, all my life, you have told me that I'm meant to be a great king, so great that I can rule the devas, the gods. Mahishasura said with glowing eyes, I want to know what I am supposed to do to make that dream a reality. Mahisha's uncle looked at the strapping young boy and smiled. He told Mahishasura all about his parents and the boon of Lord Agni. Mahishasura listened attentively and finally nodded, so I have to pray to Lord Brahma. Mahisha's uncle nodded. The young boy then set out to the forest and performed a severe penance to Lord Brahma. Finally, Lord Brahma was pleased and appeared before Mahishasura. What boon do you seek, Mahishasura? Lord, I was born after my father had a boon from Lord Agni. I wish to get the boon myself to make it more powerful. I wish that I cannot be killed by any man, god, or animal. I wish to be the most powerful of all creatures ever created. Mahishasura immediately said. Lord Brahma was not very happy, but he already committed. He had no choice. I love this next line. Lord Brahma had a suspicion that this boon was going to have very bad results. However, as he had promised he would give any boon, he had to grant Mahisha's boon. With a heavy heart, Lord Brahma granted Mahisha his boon and disappeared. Mahishasura returned home a triumphant man and began preparations for war to expand his kingdom. Empowered by his boon, no one was able to stand up against Mahishasura, and soon he became powerful. He ruled all over the earth. However, Mahishasura just did not conquer kingdoms. He destroyed the kingdoms. He terrorized the people. People feared him, but did not know what to do to escape from him. Anyone who stood up against Mahishasura was mercilessly killed by the demon. The people prayed fervently to Mahadeva, the great goddess, to come and protect them. Meanwhile, Mahishasura was not satisfied after conquering the earth. He set his sight on the heavens. He invaded the heavens and defeated Indra, the king of the gods. Indra's army was defeated, and the devas were all driven out. The devas ran and went to Brahma. So we're going to stop here and switch to the shortest version, because I think you can see the lay of the land. The gods are in trouble. Things are looking bad for everyone, except for maybe Mahishasura. So once upon a time, there lived a demon, Asura, named Mahisha. He found great happiness in hurting. This is for children, by the way. He found great happiness in hurting people. Once he decided to pray to Lord Brahma, who he thought would give him a boon, which would make him invincible. So we know that this happened. Mahisha performed severe penances, praying and fasting for months as he stood on one foot. The three worlds trembled under the strength of his penances, and the pleased Lord Brahma came to him and gave him his boon. So Mahisha asked for immortality, that nothing could destroy him, and he was granted this. He was sure that there is a call. This is important. So he asked that no man should be able to kill. And if he had to die, who did he leave out? He said no man, no God, no animal, but who did he leave out?
Women.
Women. He was positive. He said, if I had to die, it would be at the hands of only a woman. He was sure that no woman could ever fight against him, however strong she may be. Now that Mahisha was invincible, he and the other asuras, those against the gods, went about hurting and killing everyone on earth, and then went to the heavens to fight the gods. Even Indra's thunderbolt could not withstand the asura attack. Mahisha drove out the gods and took over Indra's throne. Mahishasura started harassing all pious people, religious people, who continued praying to Vishnu or Shiva. So we've got three big gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, that everyone's really saying, help. The gods and people were depressed and decided to ask Lord Shiva for help. Lord Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma concentrated hard and used their radiant energies, which were joined by the energies from Indra and the other gods. This godly energy, which we now know is called Shakti, took the form, I like the way it said, it is a children's story, took the form of a divine lady with 1,000 arms. Usually Durga has 8 to 10. In each arm, she carried a weapon belonging to all gods. So her 8 to 10 arms are holding weapons that the gods gave her. And this was Durga Devi. She mounted a fiery lion, sometimes it shows a tiger, and roared. It was a roar that shook mountains and created huge waves in the seas. Even Mahisha was worried, but just for a second, because his ego, his vanity took over when he saw, oh, it's just a woman. Durga created a large army from her breath. So all of these other Shaktis were born. She created a large army from her breath to fight Mahisha's army. And we were just discussing this morning that the breath spiritually is really this awareness, this consciousness, and then fought with Mahisha, who came in the form of a buffalo. Remember, he could take both forms. This is really a story for the prairies. He came in the form of a buffalo. As he struggled to set himself from the buffalo form, she killed him with her swords, delivering the earth and heavens of the burden called Mahishasura. So there you go. It's a bit anticlimactic, but that's the end of the story. You get the gist of it. So, time to figure out, that was frightening, wasn't it? I could go on to say that all was well and many idols were created of Durga, and it's a wonderful life. So, as we look at this story, this is really the epic behind Navratri. The incarnations are all derived from Durga. And there's actually, I know that there are the usual ones that we look at, but in truth, they're quite unusual. The incarnations, they say, of Durga, they are 8 goddesses, 9 including Durga. So this makes up the 9 nights. And they actually are, I'm going to not pronounce these properly, but Sailaputra, who's the daughter of the Himalayas, Brahmacharina, who follows celibacy, Chandraganta, who has the moon in her necklace, Kushmanda, the creator of the universe, Skandamata, who was born out of powers, Katyayani, the daughter of a sage, the one we know, Kala Ratri, Kali, the destroyer, Mahagori, wife of Lord Shiva, and Siddhi Datra, blessing of siddhis or accomplishment, success, and mystic powers. Those are actually the 9 goddesses. So we actually look at different ones, but those I've seen are the ones that are often mentioned as the 9 goddesses. So these are different incarnations. They're born from this consciousness that we have, the Shiv Shakti Durga. So Oh, we've got some feedback. Excellent. What this all means. Ego, how books are judged by their covers, how we judge others without knowing. Yes, so definitely. I liked how Mashisa thought, oh, it's a woman. She can't do much for me against me. So, but it's so much about ego. Ego is a huge piece of this story. And how might this story be relevant to what's going on in the world, what's going on within the self? And if we again review the elements of the story, we've got this being, this, I don't know, this pursuit, this ambition to be the most powerful being on the planet, real power hungry, and using that power, the second element, using that power in a destructive way. You can be super powerful, doesn't have to be in a destructive way, but we saw Mahishasura was very destructive and frightening, terrifying. And then we've got the male gods who are not able to defeat Mahishasura. So this role that the feminine, which is really Shakti, it's not about gender, but it's always translated as a feminine or spiritual power. Power can go both ways, exactly, destructive or constructive. So we've got this feminine power, and she is the one who's able to defeat. Once the gods admit, look, we can't do this ourselves, they create this goddess who is able to actually defeat Mahishasura, who underestimated the effect that she might have. So those are sort of the key elements of the story. What does that have to do with us, our world, our day-to-day life? So your thoughts and feelings are so welcomed. Unpacking the story of Durga. Again, you can unmute yourself or type in the chat box your brilliant thoughts. Power is both micro and macro.
Most of our approaches of how we address things aren't really sustainable and what change that we want in the world.
Right. And what makes it unsustainable? What is it and how we're addressing? Why isn't it sustainable? And this is huge. Change is it's a constant in life is change.
Well, perhaps maybe a part of it is what are we aiming for? It's one thing.
The intention.
Perhaps on a spiritual level, the change we're trying to do is very physical.
Right.
So it's not like there's any shift in awareness, shift in attitudes. And so you can maybe change things on a surface level, but whatever your attitudes and your awareness is still going to start to create the same things that you're already dealing with.
So at which level or depth is that change? Is it a cosmetic or superficial change, but the things underneath haven't really changed? So they just start to crop up again. Yeah. So it's not really, as we say, a permanent shift. Anything else from the story that feels like it's relevant to the self? Competition for an upper hand type of approach. That is a main lesson that pandemic brought forth. We cannot devolve, but only evolve in a more proactive shift. Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting that you mention this, because this is one of the thoughts that's been on my mind a lot. The competition versus collaboration has really, to me, been so key during this time. That the power we have together, and this requires and I'm going to give away a big hint now, pure feelings for collaboration. Competition is a product, we know, of ego. Collaboration is a product of so much respect. And it's very interesting, just before coming here, we were in an online, this case, it was a fitness class, it doesn't matter, but an online. And at the end, we're just, saying goodbye to those who joined online. And one of them was a doctor, and really sweet. I know this doctor, and she is not vaccinated because she has had a couple of bouts of cancer. So she's in the category that cannot medically vaccinate. So this is why she stays online. But I was looking at her and I said, how are you? And she said, well, I've just been running, as a healthcare giver at this time. It's crazy. And she was just sharing the fitness classes are just like gold. And I was just, my heart was touched. And I was just saying anything I can do to support, I'll do whatever, because the healthcare providers are the story. And how can we collaborate and cooperate? And I remember her looking at me, and I says, I miss you guys so much. I can't come there, but I miss you. And so I made everyone in the class trek in front of the computer and say hello. She has not seen them. And I remember just that feeling of such almost a family feeling. Like, how can we, and I've enjoyed so much seeing the collaboration, the support, and how that's really empowered souls at this time. We can't just think of the self and how can I get myself forward? No one moves forward without collaboration. And when I heard the story of Durga first, one of the pieces I heard was it was actually the gods coming together, because a theme in it before was all of the gods, the male gods, were trying all sorts of crazy stuff, the fighting, the unsustainable, fighting against Maheshwaras, trying all sorts of things and there came a point when their ego bowed down and said, we don't know what to do. And they came together, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, they came together and created this solution, which we call Shiv Shakti. So it was out of an energy of collaboration that a constructive power was born. We're in this together, the butterfly, buffalo versus butterfly. The butterfly effect, when collaboration is the key, the mindfulness. Yeah, I feel that really, really powerfully at this time. The mindfulness towards oneself and for others, including nature, that ripples out and beyond. Absolutely, we really affect each other in our attitudes as well. And another thought from Pauline, just a thought of a mother or a woman who is so caring, loving, nurturing, tolerant. If we have that character, we can create harmonious relationships, which can create peace and happiness. So yes, this is obviously a main theme, one of the beautiful, and I know it also shows up in the Hobbit story, where this incredibly powerful being saying is, it says that no man can defeat me. And then the one opposing pulls off their helmet and says, I am not a man, I am a woman, and is able to defeat. This is such a strong theme in epics, and it's probably based on the Durga. And the fact the nine nights of the goddesses ends with Dashera, suggesting that it's this kind of energy that is the only one that can defeat Ravan, right? Which is Set, Dashera. So this is a key part of the story. We see that when ego fights ego, we call it war. And the price is huge, the destructiveness, the lack of real change. We know the effects of this. And this is a common way that we go into change, is fighting. Or as many of the pious-minded people were doing, avoiding, running away scared. So those are our two go-tos, either escaping, running away, avoiding, denying, or battle, martyr, suicide mission, is very sort of violent. But this is a third option the story speaks about, this, we call it maternal or feminine energy, which every soul has, regardless of gender. Every soul has this energy. And it's really such a beautiful part of what I feel with the Brahma Kumaris that I've enjoyed so much, is looking at this third option, this different kind of energy that's so different from what we've used before, this feminine, or sometimes we say spiritual energy, which can actually defeat the darkness, can defeat the sorrow, really the cause of sorrow within the human soul. And that's really playing out right now. So accessing that spiritual, that feminine energy is super important. And it's really interesting because the Brahma Kumaris is known as, one of the few key unique features of the organization. It's the largest spiritual organization in the world run by women. And some think that's a feminist statement, which is not at all. But it's again touching back on this Shakti energy, the feminine energy, that maternal. It's not just by women, but we actually put mothers in front, the maternal in front, as a form of change, as a form of leadership, as a response, as finding solutions. So ultimately, yeah, we have to bring a balance. So between masculine and feminine, all of us, whatever gender you happen to be, all of us have gotten out of balance. So whenever a problem or a situation emerges, our go-to is, what should I do? Right? This is a very masculine approach or reaction. And this is why the male symbol is the circle, the soul, with an arrow pointing out, this idea of action or energy going out. And then the feminine symbol is the soul, the circle, grounded with that cross, which is actually yoga, that cross, very grounded. So this response, which I've seen over and over and over again in the leadership with the Brahma Kumaris, and they've had to deal, the spiritual leaders in this organization have had to deal with massive issues, massive. You're dealing with thousands of people, so many different governments. It's just incredible. None of the spiritual leaders were trained for administration of, a multinational NGO. Their only training has been Raj Yoga, this study that gives us a spiritual experience of the self as a soul and enables us to connect to the Supreme Soul. That's really their training, and understanding the law of karma, of course. And based on that, the transformation that happened inside, their response to when anything emerges is always, they actually go to God first, but in their intellects, but how should I be? What stage of being? So again, that circle with the, very grounded, what stage of being, what state do I need to be in to have a constructive response to what is going on? This is very foreign to most of us. We always start to worry about, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And we start to ask a lot of people, what should I do? Rather than, going into this beautiful silence, this beautiful connection with truth, with something that's beyond, and how that draws us into a state, and a way of thinking that is a response. When we look at Durga and all of these weapons that she was gifted, and I'll see if I can find a picture for you. These weapons that she was gifted by the gods. What do you think those weapons are? What do you think those weapons are? See, she's on a tiger there.
Sure, there's a lotus there somewhere for one of the weapons.
Yes, you're so right. Yes. Good job. There is a lotus. I will bring it up for you. Sorry?
I think someone's taking it.
Oh, I will come back. Sorry. Oh, really? Metaphorical. Really? Someone shared? Oh, I just saw her balance one. All right, bear with me while I attempt.
Oh, metaphorical was the last thing.
Yeah, while I attempt. All right, I'm hoping that you can see Durga. Sorry. Yeah? Okay, let me take myself away. So there she is. I don't know if you can see her weapons.
Mhm.
She does have a lotus. She's in this one riding a tiger, which is what I have seen often. She has a lotus. She has a trident, a bow and arrow, a conch shell, what we call a chakra, a discus, a sword, a mace, and then there's always that hand that's giving blessings. So, and she's got a very sweet looking tiger that is for Viman or vehicle. So these are the weapons. And if you always, when you look at the face, the artists have always, even though it looks like, wow, this is a battle situation, they're always drawn with an expression of sweetness, of love, of kindness. The goddesses always have this face, even though they're always equipped with arms and weapons. The face is always of love and sweetness, and she looks fairly composed and royal there on her vehicle. But what do you think? Because this is very critical to what is that type of power that we need at this time in order to face constant changes in the world, be a problem solver in our own life to create sustainable and constructive change. So I know, Nora, you brought up the lotus. What does the lotus represent?
Well, out of the context, not in the context of Raja Yoga, I would have thought of purity.
Right.
In terms of maintaining a sense of self-integrity regardless of situations. In the context of Raja Yoga, the lotus often represents a quality of character, I recall.
Yes, so to be detached and loving, very connected. This, whether it's purity or the character, pure character, which is detached and loving. So we can really just say that this is huge. This is central to what is unique. So we saw with Mahishasura, he didn't even have pure intentions. He wanted to be powerful for his own ego, really. And this, unfortunately, is many of our stories, is that we're trying to get that position or that friendship or that thing just to feed this false sense of our own value. This is very common for all of us, and it's nothing we should feel bad or ashamed about. It's what happens when we lose that true self-respect, because nobody can live without some form of self-value, even if it's an artificial form. So we start to do all sorts of controlling, manipulation, trying to amass this false sense of wealth or self-worth. So there's no purity. That's not pure sense of self-respect. So purity is huge when it comes to creating something new. Purity is essential. And purity is always based on truth. So the lotus is key in terms of change. There has to be purity. It cannot come out of ego or fear or anger or greed or attachment or worry. None of these, the point that was made at the beginning from Nora, none of these will lead to sustainable change. If it comes from a very pure place, this deep sense of self-respect, it will lead to something constructive and long-lasting, very pure. What about the trident? What might the trident represent? There's 3 blades on the trident. That might be significant. This is probably the most difficult one, the trident.
I don't know if it is. Because when I saw the trident, I thought that was quite interesting. So I recall seeing it in The Little Mermaid when I was a child.
Yeah.
You know, her father being the king of the ocean, he had
Yeah.
a trident, and I was wondering,
Yeah.
what does the trident represent? And then I remembered, at least in Raja Yoga, we talk about one picture, which it does cross all religions, the
Mhm.
Trimurti.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's what it refers to, Trimurti, which is an image that shows the three functions of God.
Mhm.
On a spiritual level. And again, we kind of get that mixed up in terms of creator, sustainer, and destroyer.
Mhm.
I don't know
Mhm.
if that's what that is supposed to represent.
Oh my goodness, there's so much going on here. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Nora. Yes, the threesome of something. We've got a lot going on here. So let me see. Okay, the tiger, power and royalty, elements and control of the elements, inner power, center of self, the lotus, purity, purity of thoughts, the Trinity. Exactly. So we're at the trident, the Trinity. So, oh wow. Oh no. Sorry. I'm so bad. Oh my goodness. Look at this. There's so much going on. I need a second pair of eyes. Okay, we've got the chakra, self-realization. Hema, I'm so sorry. You have been interacting all this time and we have been so just negligent, and we are now looking at it. So we will keep an eye on you. So yes, we'll get to that chakra. Definitely self-realization. Right. So the Trinity looks at true change. And true change has three aspects. Whether we say three aspects of time or the three qualities of change, it requires establishing something new, which means of letting go of the old, destruction, letting go of the old, and then sustaining, the power to sustain what is new. So, and of course, it's true, the trident is related to the king of the ocean. So the ocean of knowledge, if you will, the ocean of all experience. But this idea of threesome, that change, we tend to go at change with just one prong, right? We don't really think it through. We tend to go at change, I want something new, but we haven't let go of the old. And we haven't really thought about, what does happily ever after look like with this change? How do I sustain it? So true change is going to require all three aspects be considered, the trident. What about the bow and arrow? The bow and arrow. She's got a lot going on there, lots of weapons.
I'm sorry, I'll have to leave soon, but the bow and arrow, it has to do with the air. So I'm thinking, I'm just putting it out there, that
Yeah.
possibly what is said, the words that are projected, the words that are thrown, the words that come out. So I guess the verbal aspect of things, and yeah, the pureness of our thoughts, of our actions, and of our words.
Beautiful, beautiful. There's so much connected, and you've definitely, when we talk about the sincerity behind our words and the sincerity behind our thoughts, when you think about, when you're speaking to someone or someone else is speaking, how powerful that speech is when it carries sincerity. They can say much less and it hits the target, it hits the heart, because there's so much sincerity in the words. And this is a main thing in defeating. The bow and arrow also obviously conjures up, really zeroing in on the target, being very focused. We always think of that arrow hitting the target. So, thank you so much for joining, Philomena. We will miss you. All the best. Lovely to have you from Montreal. Okay, well, enjoy. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Yes, and it will be recorded on YouTube if you wish to enjoy later. Om Shanti. So this idea of merci, this idea of being able to hit the target through that sincerity of my own understanding, the sincerity and purity of my own intention, super important. What about the conch shell? What does the conch shell represent? Some say conch. I was taught conch shell. In the Caribbean, we say conch shell. So whichever one makes sense to you. What does that represent? Has anyone ever seen one or seen it used? Oh, wow, Hema, I see creator, sustainer, destroyer. Thank you. I know that you're probably responding to an earlier. The conch shell. Again, these are all coming from this feminine approach to change. So very often, I know I have seen this happen. They'll use an empty horn or shell and they'll blow into it. Call to Supreme. That's beautiful. It's very close. Purity in words, that was the bow and arrow. But the call to Supreme, yeah, there's a lot of calling that needs to happen here. Definitely a call to the Supreme. But the conch shell wakes things up. It announces. So people blow into the conch shell and it wakes up other souls. It wakes the self up. Yes, it's definitely on the same wavelength or language as calling to the Supreme. So, and I love the image of a shell. You know, they say you put a shell to your ear and you can hear the ocean. So what exactly is being blown through that conch shell? It's really announcing wisdom from the Supreme. So announcing truth, really blowing truth out to the self, to the world that we get from the Supreme that really wakes us up. So knowledge-based words on the bow and arrow. Beautiful.
I also heard that the conch shell, it's not anyone can just use it. Like it's not easy.
I'm going to tell you it's not. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not easy to blow any of these. I remember growing up and it was in the Jewish faith and they would at the New Year's blow ram's horn. And the rabbi conducting would blow. And I remember being a small child and watching and saying, I could just tell that is not easy. Like he must have practiced. Like only few are gonna, you know, like it would come out so beautifully. But sometimes it'd be like it didn't quite work and you'd have to try again. I thought, okay, this isn't as easy as it looks. You don't just go blow. There's an art to it. So there's an art, of course, to sharing the truth, of course. The chakra, the discus that she's spinning on her finger, Pauline always shared about the power of self-understanding can never be under. This is huge. Almost always, we have thought the problem was outside. And this is completely 100% the opposite of what's going on. The source of change needs to begin inside. This is huge. So we say, as I change, the world changes, or be the change you want to see. We have so many slogans on this. So I need a mechanism of self-understanding. I really need to fully understand the greatness of the self, as well as what happened to me over time. We really are quite disconnected from our spiritual greatness. So the chakra is a really huge tool of self-understanding, which will be critical for moving through change. The sword is, I'm speeding up because I'm looking at the time. I don't know what happened. The sword is the sword of knowledge that can cut through falsehood. The mace, which some of us are not familiar with, but it looks like the Calgary Tower. The mace represents power. But again, this is the power of spirituality, power from being connected to the most non-violent being in existence, which is God, the Supreme. So really being an instrument for that. And also mastery over the self. Again, no violence. This was a huge weapon Durga had against Mahishasura. Mahishasura was using violence. Durga was not violent at all, but had complete self-mastery. That royalty you see, no reactivity. Someone insults you, maintaining the self-respect to respond in a way that doesn't just keep your own dignity, but destroys the darkness in the other soul. That's really what this story is about. It's not about destroying a buffalo demon. It's about destroying the darkness that has entered each of us. And how can I create a forum where the dignity, that collaboration again, the dignity of all can be nurtured and nourished? That's really what Durga looks at. And lastly, we have that beautiful hand of blessings. This is her big, big weapon. She is a bestower. She herself is full, content. She is a bestower. She does not need any recognition. She does not need any praise. Her ego, she is egoless. This is her greatest weapon against ego, is that she is egoless. So these beautiful images at this time of Navratri that really remind us of the direction we need to look, where we need to look in order to move through our own journey, our own moments of change, and the power of spirituality, the power of connecting to ourselves as spiritual beings, and also of connecting to the Supreme Soul, the one who stays in an ever spiritual state. So say Om Shanti to Durga. I am back. I am noticing the time. I'm going to see if there's any other comments that anyone wants to make. That kind of flew by. Any other comments anyone wants to make about any of this?
I think for me about sustainability, we always hear of, mothers, maternal is about sustaining. And to be able to understand, I realize what that really actually looks like.
Yeah.
That it's actually quite invisible. I think it provokes thought.
I just, in my own experience, I am such an advocate of the power of purity in making things happen and being a glue in sustaining. And I think that, although mothers have lots of attachments, they also are so, as you say, they're so behind the scenes. They aren't seeking that praise and recognition. They're so content to nurture and nourish. And we all have that quality. And it's beautiful when you think of using it on the self first. So one of the Shaktis we traditionally look at is Parvati, who went into her own retreat in order to cultivate her own spirituality. And I've always loved that message, that symbol, that's a piece of Durga, that she took the time to cultivate her own. This isn't all just about God, 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 but that God's wish is that we cultivate our own spiritual power, which is very pure, very constructive, very benevolent, could never harm. So taking the time to do that for the self first is a beautiful message that Durga gives. And that would be sustainable. Yeah. So we have run out of time. Was story time okay?
I think we should do that at least once a month.
Once a month. So we interview once a month, story time once a month, inner fitness once a month. We'll figure out what the fourth one is. We welcome your suggestions and we very much appreciate your presence. So thank you so much for joining. We're just going to end with a very short reflection. I take a moment to step outside with my awareness of my physical identity. And I step into the form of Durga. Not physically stepping into the form, but the feeling of stepping into that form. That I have such a deep sense of respect for the self as a soul, not based on anything external, not any role or relationship or skill or talent or art or possession. Just that I, the soul, am valuable. Just my existence. I am filled with such spiritual richness. The most powerful treasures one can know. Peace, love, truth, lightness, wisdom. They all reside within me. A shadow is cast over those treasures when I forget myself and succumb to ego, an image. But when I begin to hear the call of truth, a longing in the heart to be authentic, to be real, that lock to my treasure store heart starts to open. I begin the journey of a return to purity, return to self. I have the courage to let go of illusions, false pride, limited value, and move towards the light. Who I really am, my true beauty, my highest potential as a child of the Supreme Soul. Stepping into the path, the journey of Durga, who's able to conquer all illusions inside. Om Shanti. Thank you for those on YouTube, for those on Zoom, for one and all. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate
Okay, so Nora is going to take over because this might stop. What do you want me to say? Okay, so just to say from Shanti to everyone. Sorry, our microphone stopped working here at the center. We're just using another microphone. So please join us again next week. Let's see what we have for Soul Cafe. But we have other sessions, and you're welcome to check out on the website, calgary.berlin.com. Let's see. Our next online session is on Sunday in Experience, 6:30 to 7:30. Otherwise, our next interview is on 6:45. Sorry, not 6:45, 7:40 to 8:20. So I'm not sure if souls can hear on our other temporary microphone. All right. Om Shanti.